Life often seems like a puzzle that needs to be solved. The problem is, we are often missing some very important pieces. This often happens in our interactions with others. Someone makes a comment that you don't quite understand the meaning of. Instead of asking them for clarity, you try to figure it out on your own, piecing together the information and filling in the gaps with what you believe to be true, your assumptions. Today we're going to dive into the third agreement in this great book. Don't make assumptions. We have the tendency to make assumptions about everything. We make assumptions about what others are thinking, feeling, and doing. Our assumptions can feel very real, but they're just an illusion based on our own experiences of the past, our present, and what we believe will happen in the future. Because what we are imagining feels so real, we often believe that these assumptions are true, when in fact, they might not be true at all. If we assume that they are doing something we dislike or disapprove of, we begin painting all kinds of negative pictures in our mind. We are choosing to go down a path that will lead us to a place that we don't want to go. We even start looking for evidence that the assumptions that we are making are true, often overlooking conflicting information that could be very positive. For example, you went out with someone and had a really great time. Now this could be a friend, a colleague, or someone that you might have romantic interest in. You send them a text saying how much fun you had and you're looking forward to getting together again, but you don't hear back from them. In the meantime, you start making negative and critical assumptions. All the while, you later find out that their delay in response had nothing to do with you, but you allowed yourself to assume the worst. When we jump to conclusions, we fall into a trap of our own making. Much of the sadness and drama that we experience in life is created by making assumptions, jumping to conclusions, and taking things personally. As humans, we have the tendency to assign meaning to things that we experience. And if we aren't careful, our insecurities and past experiences will influence how we feel and what we believe about the current situation. Our assumptions put a filter over our eyes, causing us to misinterpret and misunderstand. We see what we want to see and hear what we want to hear. We don't perceive the way things are, we perceive the way we think things are. Unfortunately, very often our perception isn't based in reality. In relationships, this can be a big problem. When we do this, we're asking for trouble. Example from the book. You fall in love and get engaged. Because you feel like you know your partner so well, you make the assumption that they see marriage the same way you do. You assume that you both have the same wants, needs, and desires for your life together. So you tie the knot and everything is amazing. However, once the honeymoon phase is over and you've been living together for a while, you find out that this isn't necessarily true. You want to begin starting a family, but your spouse wants to focus on the time together without kids, to travel and do all kinds of things. You assumed one thing and they assumed the other. Expectation not met, disappointment sets in, disagreements and conflicts begin knocking at the door, invading your once happy home. This happens to couples because they avoided having this type of conversation before they got married. Perhaps they hoped and assumed that their desires were aligned with their partners without the need to clarify. There are many different examples of this in relationships, and it all boils down to the biggest assumption of them all. We assume that our partner is a mind reader. Somehow they should know what we want and what we need, without our having to tell them. We often say to ourselves, I shouldn't have to tell you. You should have known. I shouldn't have to ask you. Since they don't have the ability to read your mind, there will be times when they don't meet your expectations. When this happens, you often get disappointed, your feelings get hurt, and from that place of hurt, you make even more assumptions. And you build an emotional wall between you and them. At this point, the shoulda, woulda, coulda comments come out. You should have known. If you would have done this, you could have done that. And it goes on and on. The author states that our biggest assumption is that we believe and expect that everyone sees life the same way we do. I know you've heard the saying, when you assume, you make an ass out of you, not me. So why do we do this? Often we do this out of fear. Fear of confrontation, fear of facing the truth about the situation, fear of facing the truth about others, and perhaps even fear of facing the truth about ourselves. We do this because we often lack the courage to ask for clarity. Our assumptions, regardless of what they might be, either negative or positive, give us a false sense of power and security because we are controlling the narrative in our mind. Sometimes we put so much faith in our assumption that we will destroy a relationship in order to prove that we are right. Deep down, we often believe that we can change others. When this doesn't happen, because true and lasting change only happens when a person makes that decision for themselves, suddenly the blinders come off and you start seeing and imagining things that you didn't want to see before. Somehow it becomes the other person's flaw and fault. You blame them for not meeting your expectations. The author is quoted as saying, "Real love is accepting others the way they are without trying to change them." Side note, we do this to others, but we also do this to ourselves. We often put unrealistic expectations on ourselves and underestimate our abilities, assuming we can or can't do something based on our past or fear of the future, often lying to ourselves about who we are and what we truly desire. So how do we stop this? First, acknowledge that others cannot read our mind. Second, take ownership. It's up to us to state what we want, what we need, and what we desire. If others tell us something with their words or actions, and we don't quite understand what they mean, instead of assuming, ask for clarity. The author states, it's always better to ask questions than to make assumptions, because assumptions set us up for suffering. Knowledge bridges that gap. Third, make sure the communication is clear. If you don't understand, ask questions until you do. Be ready though. You may not always like what you hear, but it will be based in truth. So find your voice to ask what you want and let others have that same privilege. Just imagine how life will be when you stop making assumptions. The way you communicate will be changed. Your relationships will not suffer from the negative effects of unrealistic expectations and false assumptions. When you stop assuming, you become impeccable with your word. This will have a positive effect on all of your relationships. You won't need to make assumptions because you have the information that you will need. Becoming aware of this habit of making assumptions is foundational in overcoming this. Taking action to change is what will make the real difference. It's not going to be easy, and it will take awareness and commitment, but taking action over and over again strengthens that muscle. This new habit begins to grow, and it will soon become second nature. This is the path to personal freedom. So that's a brief summary of the third agreement. Don't make assumptions. So now, let's look at a recap of the agreements that we've covered so far. The key takeaways of the first three agreements that we've covered are as follows. Agreement number 1, be impeccable with your word. Speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or gossip about others. Use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love. Agreement number 2, don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. The third agreement: don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstanding, sadness, and drama. With just this one agreement, you will completely transform your life. I hope you like the book summary. If you do, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the future ones coming out. Also, get a copy of the book. There's a link in the description below. It's a great book. Until next time, have a great day and don't forget to pay it forward.